Go back to the story that's going to hurt all of our pockets. And I'm not talking about the fuel price now. I'm talking about electricity price increases from the 1st of April. The power utility has been granted a 9.6% tariff hike. Eskom has been battling debt worth billions of rand, forcing government to spend billions on bailouts. Well, this week, Finance Minister Godongwana says the power utility will have to do more to keep the lights on. Godongwana says the utility is expected to take further steps towards cost containment, as they call it, and also conclude the sale of multiple assets. Let's get reaction to what's actually going to happen with Eskom now. I'm joined by Professor Sampson Mamphweli from the University of Stellenbosch's Centre for Renewable and Sustainable Energy Studies. Prof, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. So we'll talk about IPPs and renewable energy in a moment. First of all, before we get to renewable energy, we keep giving money to Eskom. You agree or disagree?
Good evening, Gareth, and the viewers. Yeah, it is kind of a difficult situation because Eskom is in this huge debt that has got history. And part of the history is that there was the new build program, Medupi and Kusile, whose costs has escalated quite significantly. Almost twice the original price, if not 3 times. So if government does not intervene and assist Eskom in terms of the repayment of the debt, then Eskom needs to recover some of the money from the tariffs, which basically means that you and I and the rest of the society needs to pay a little bit more for our electricity. So that's the quagmire that we're sitting in. As things stand, if you look at the government bailouts, it's basically the money that goes through Eskom to the lenders. It's not money that Eskom uses for anything else other than repaying the debt.
So why are we still at a point now where we're talking about years and years of bailouts for Eskom? I understand trying to get them out of their current situation. We've got to still keep the lights on. How much focus in the budget speech, Prof, went to IPP and renewable energy? Were you happy with what the President and the Finance Minister had to say?
I was generally happy with both the announcement by the President and the Finance Minister. The issue around IPPs is that when we started with the program, we were basically paying school fees, doing industrialization of the sector and things like that. And if you look at the cost of IPPs now, the cost has gone down quite dramatically. It's even below the cost of generation using coal power stations. So the biggest issue here is policy certainty, because we had a period where we didn't have much of policy certainty. We have the integrated resource plan, which is the country's plan that we need to implement. If we don't stop implementing that plan, the electricity price will go down quite soon. The announcements made by the President himself around the bid window 6 and around the other various interventions that government has come up with, which I must commend government in that kind of respect, because they have a number of interventions in place, including Eskom, by the way. Eskom also has a very good just energy transition strategy. They are implementing now the unbundling process with transmission going to be independent and being able to purchase power directly from Eskom and other players in the space.
How long is that going to take, Professor? So what's your estimation on how long is that going to take, this unbundling and this transferring of transmission power? What's your timeline, do you think?
I think by the end of this year, transmission will be independent of Eskom. We know that it's still going to be a subsidiary, but it will be an independent company. The other 2 legs will be independent by the end of the next financial year. So we're looking at things happening between this year and mid next year towards the end of next year.
It does help me also wonder, as a last question to you, Prof. Eskom, we know in their application to NERSA, they wanted well over 20%, almost double what was granted by NERSA. They got the 9.61 granted, but it's still going to come back to bite Eskom, isn't it? Because they're going to come back and say that they're not able to continue with their restructuring and also their infrastructure improvements because they never got the money. And that's why we keep having our lights going off. So when do you think Eskom is going to be able to get on top of the problems, knowing how little money they've actually got?
I think when I looked at the Eskom application versus what they got, it's almost half of what they got. And if you look at the 9.6%, it does not include the application by Eskom for the regulatory clearing account for the previous financial year. It includes the one that has been approved for the other financial year. And NERSA has also indicated that they are still going to look closely at certain aspects at Eskom, including the regulatory asset base for Eskom. As you had the Minister of Finance talking about Eskom having to get rid of some of the assets. So that also is going to have an impact on the final outcome from NERSA. However, what we've learned over the years is that Eskom never gets their application wrong. So for me, this is just a postponement of an increase that is inevitable, and we're going to somehow have to cover for this cost when Eskom does the next application for their regulatory clearing account in the next financial year. In my view, Eskom and NERSA needs to sit down and deal with all the regulatory clearing accounts and deal with the actual cost of generation and give us one big increase that will then deal with this whole issue once and for all. And then going forward, we then have a benefit of the decrease in the electricity tariffs.
Wouldn't that be nice? I suppose the one big increase, you could see a lot of people getting upset about that, but I suppose the argument could be take one big hit and then never have to worry about it again. I do understand where you're coming from. Professor, as always, wonderful to have you here on eNCA on South Africa Tonight, here just after 14 minutes after 6 o'clock. Speaking to us from Cape Town, it was Professor Sampson Mamphweli. My team